everybody.
Hi.
Welcome to this week's Shoosmiths Live video. I'm Sam and this is Rosie, and we're going to be talking to you about a variety of things today, including diversity, aspiring solicitors, blogging and LinkedIn. Rosie, you've got a blog. So you're the author of a blog called Apply.Shine.Win, and that is one of the things I really want to talk to you about today, as well as your LinkedIn posts. So I think that you could offer some really good advice to students that are watching this.
I'll do my best.
Thank you. And I'll get to that in a second, but I'm Sam Hope and I'm the Graduate Recruitment Manager at Shoosmiths. So we are filming from our Leeds office today, which is lovely. The sun is shining.
So nice.
We're going to share some pictures of our office after this video on our Instagram story. So after this video, do make sure you head over there and check out some of the pictures and videos of the Leeds office. The sky is blue, the sun's out, and I've heard we've got a roof terrace here.
Yeah, brilliant.
So we always start asking you a question, and I would like to know, where are you watching us from today? So like I said, we're in Leeds.
And is it sunny where you are? Because it's beautiful in Leeds.
Yeah, fab. Great question. So I'd also love it if you could tag a friend or a colleague into this video, just so that you can share this video with them, because I think this is going to be one of our most useful videos that we've done in our Shoosmiths Live series.
Fingers crossed.
No pressure, Rosie. So Rosie Watterson is going to give you an introduction and just give you a little bit of information about her background and how she came to be here today.
Yeah, so thank you for having me. It's so exciting to be here. So I'm originally from York, but I went to do a history degree in Queens and Belfast. I did my degree there, and then I worked there for a little bit, and then I got a training contract at Herbert Smith Freehills after doing a vacation scheme with them. I also did a vacation scheme with Baker & McKenzie, so feel free to ask me any questions about that. And then I have moved back to do the graduate diploma in law in York. I've just finished that. And then in January I do the LPC in London, and I move, and I'm really excited about that. I started my blog almost exactly a year ago, actually we're calling it like 11 and a half months, I think, so that's quite exciting. And yeah, I sort of started it because I kind of wanted to like have something to do with my time as well as like the GDL, so yeah, that's what I've done, that's why I'm here.
Okay, perfect. So one of the things that I really want to touch on is obviously raising personal brand or raising your own profile, which I think is really important for students, because law is a people business. It's about providing amazing client service, building really good relationships and networks. So being able to start that early on, I think, is really important. So what would you advise to somebody who's looking to raise their own profile?
Yeah, so I think it's brilliant that we have LinkedIn now. When I was doing my degree, this makes me feel really old. When I was doing my degree, sort of not everybody had LinkedIn. Like it was definitely a thing, and professionals had it, but it was only kind of getting down to student level, at least in my experience. So kind of getting LinkedIn was like, it was like setting up a Facebook profile, like for the first time. Like it was quite an effort. Whereas now sort of most people have it. I'm going to say most people have it. And I think it's a really brilliant tool, because it means that you can get your personal brand, which is it's sort of buzzwordy in corporate, isn't it? But you can tell other people in a professional setting sort of who you are, what you're interested in, what you think, and you can really get your network to have sort of like an idea of like who you are and what you're about. And I think that's really important, actually. And if I were to go back and do it all again, if I were to get a training contract again, I would follow and connect with as many graduate recruiters as I possibly could, and then I would post sort of thought through and hopefully intelligent posts really regularly, and if they were relevant to the firm, then I would probably tag graduate recruiters as well if I was feeling a bit pushy. And that way you know that the people who are going to be looking at your applications, the people who are going to be interviewing you, they've already built up a picture of you based on a bunch of intelligent, interesting things that you've said and that you've posted. So that was sort of my my networking personal brand advice.
Okay, perfect. Have you ever been worried about graduate recruiters going and looking on your personal social media? Because I think that's something that we still find that people are a bit hesitant to perhaps follow us on Facebook because they don't want us to go back and stalk them, which, believe me, we don't have the time to do. Is that something you've ever thought about?
Yeah, I have. I'm going to say fortunate, it might not be the right word. I'm fortunate in that I don't have anything horrifically embarrassing. Like, you know, I'd like a drink, but I've not got any of those awful club photos or anything terrible. So I've never been like, oh my gosh, what if they found this? But I definitely have gone through and sort of filtered out some stuff. And also my privacy settings on Facebook are quite high. Like my LinkedIn is like public, and that's sort of the professional side. And then my Facebook, though there's nothing awful on it, it's very much like me and my friends and my parents, and I think it's quite nice to have that separation. And I don't mind when people I've been talking to forever on LinkedIn, they cross over, that's okay, but I wouldn't necessarily, for me personally, be adding graduate recruiters on Facebook just because I'd be worried about what my friends are going to tag me in unsympathetically and not thinking it through. Whereas LinkedIn, it feels safer in that no one's going to tag you in anything that then makes you look bad, even though it's not your fault. So I think you do have to be careful, and I think with Twitter as well, and with Instagram, all of these things, you have to be very careful that you are coming across as professional. And with LinkedIn, it's easier because it's always professional, whereas Facebook, it's difficult because your grandma's on it, you know.
Yeah, and Instagram, you're posting maybe the law event that you attended, but also what you had for dinner.
Maybe you're in a bikini,
So what is it about the posts that you've been doing on LinkedIn that you think have been so well received by other students and noticed by graduate recruiters?
So I think I'm at quite a nice position, really, because I remember not knowing anything. I remember sort of walking around Belfast and thinking I have absolutely no idea how to get a training contract. I have no idea what the process is. I don't know what a vacation scheme is. So I still remember being like that, but I also have been sort of taken through the process by, you know, people have helped me and I've been successful. And so now I'm like, I also have at least all the knowledge that I needed to get a training contract. So I'm kind of at this helpful midpoint. So I feel like students feel comfortable enough talking to me because, like, I don't have any training contracts. I can't, you know, if I don't like you, it doesn't matter. You know, there's no risk. So you can come and tell me whatever you want, and, you know, you're not going to lose anything. We can talk about it. But then also graduate recruiters like yourself, you'll come and like have me and we'll chat because, you know, I do talk to a lot of students as well. So it's quite nice to be like in the middle. And I think it's just remembering what I didn't know. Like I remember not knowing what a rolling basis was. I remember not understanding what these terms were that were like thrown about. So I think that's why my blog's quite successful. I would love to say it's because like I'm a fabulous writer. Actually, I think it's just because like I can see both sides. I'm in a good position.
Yeah, I think we see that the advice that you're sharing is so honest and insightful, and is really drilling down to what people want to hear, because it's so easy as recruiters, and people say, oh, how do I stand out on the application form? And we say, just be yourself, and it doesn't really give anything. So I think the advice you're giving is really getting in there. So one of the words we talk about a lot, especially in the graduate recruitment space and diversity space, is inspirational. And inspirational could be in terms of the actual, the thing that you've done, the act, or it could be in the way that you're passionate about something, and you share your energy and you're vibrant with other people. And it's a word that I've associated with you. And today at Leeds University Law Fair, we had lots of people who knew you, are hopefully watching our Facebook Live video now. And one person was really gushing about the advice that you had given. So, nice. So what I wanted to know from your point of view, who's been an inspiration to you, or who has given you great advice that's really stuck with you?
Well, I had a lot of help from Aspiring Solicitors, and you talked to Chris White yesterday, so there's like one of these with Chris, you should go look at it, it's great. And, you know, Gemma, who worked at Aspiring Solicitors, she gave me a ton of application advice. And then I also had like a career mentor who worked at Herbert Smith Freehills, and he went to Queen's, Ross, and he sort of was like, he gave me lots of pep talks, and like we went for coffees whenever I was in London, so that was really great. But this is really like lame, but actually the bit of advice that like sticks with me. It's a bit of advice that my dad gave me. I know, like, professional adults aren't meant to talk about their parents, but and it was when, like, I'd done a vacation scheme at Baker's and I absolutely loved it, and I thought, this is where I'm meant to be. I'd gone through the whole process, and then they didn't offer me a training contract, and I was, like, honestly really gutted. And then I called my dad. I was like, Dad, they've not offered it to me. And he was just like, oh well, on to plan B. Life's full of plan Bs. Away you go. And that was really important, and it was sort of like, it was a moment, because I realised that I wasn't a failure. I hadn't really failed. It was just, okay, plan A didn't work out how I thought it was going to work, so what's plan B then? And I think that was a really important piece of information for making applications, and also just in life, really, because then I went on, you know, and I applied for, like, Smith Freehills, and I had a brilliant time on their vacation scheme, and it felt like an even better fit, actually. And then they offered me a training contract, and even though I call it plan B because it was, actually it's better. And I think if I got to choose between the firms, I realised that it is a better fit at Smith Freehills for me. So I think the important piece of advice I've got in my life anyway is that you don't have to make plan A work. It's not always going to work. Plan B is not always going to work. You don't have to see them as failures. You're just like, okay, well, I thought that would work out and it didn't. What's next? What's the plan? Yeah. As long as there's a plan, I think, you know, that's the important thing.
I think that's a really lovely attitude to have, because especially when you're at the stage where you are applying for training contracts and VAT schemes, and it's so competitive, competitive. And we receive around 2,000 or just over 2,000 applications a year, and that's for around 20 training contracts. There are going to be knockbacks or setbacks, and it's not necessarily because... well, it's mostly never because you're a failure. And the hardest message sometimes is when somebody has done a good application form, but it just wasn't quite good enough.
Sometimes it's luck
because of the numbers.
You know, you can do. I've had applications that I read them now, and I'm like, that was a good application. Like, you know, I look at it and I'm like, I could make that better, but that should have got me somewhere, and it didn't. And I'm like, well, you know, not only do I not know what the graduate recruiter's looking for, so I'm like, I'm not thinking like I'm amazing, I'll always get a training contract, but also I'm like, it just wasn't my day, you know. Someone applied before me that did a better application and they got it and I didn't. Or there's a vacation scheme and an assessment centre for a vacation scheme. I thought I was going to miss my flight from Belfast. I was running down the corridor on my heels with my suitcase. I was flustered. I only just got there on time and I just bombed it. And it's just luck, you know. If my taxi hadn't been delayed, I would have got my flight earlier. I wouldn't have been as flustered. I would have been better in the assessment centre and I might have got it. And you can do your best and you can work really hard and you're still not going to get it, and that's a shame, but it's life, isn't it?
But like you said, sometimes it might not be the path that's for you, and it might work out.
And that's again, to be honest, that assessment centre, I now like, I probably wouldn't have been happy there either. So it's, you know, it feels a bit like a dodged bullet, that one, actually.
Okay, cool. So earlier in the year, before I mention that, actually, if you've got any questions that you would like to ask me or Rosie, then do comment, just type them in the bottom, and we will come to those in a second. There's normally a tiny bit of a delay when the questions come in, so do send them now and we'll get to those in a sec. So early in the year, actually where me and Rosie met was, first of all, I noticed her on LinkedIn and I saw lots of people were liking and commenting on her posts. So I thought, actually, this is great advice that this student is sharing. So obviously started following Rosie, and then I started sharing your posts, because I thought, this is great, I want to get this out to my networks as well. And then I attended an aspiring solicitors event earlier in the year, and the focus of that event was on disability. And you were there speaking on the panel, which I didn't realise until I got to the event. And we missed each other at the event as well.
It was such a shame.
But we messaged afterwards to say we should properly catch up. So here's the catch up.
Here it is.
You're in it now. And you were talking on the panel about disability and also about how students can approach that themselves. So I wanted to ask, what's your experience of applying to firms with an upper limb deficiency, and also what would you advise students in a similar position?
As you said, I have an upper limb deficiency and I've always had it, so there wasn't sort of like some awful accident, like it's just always been a part of me, really, and that's sort of how I look at it. And I suppose what comes hand in hand with that is it means that I never want to sort of use it as an excuse, and I never want to be like, I couldn't do this because of my arm. It very much, and I think it is with a lot of people who either have like a physical difference or maybe a learning difficulty, they think, you know, I need to be like just as good as everyone else, if not better, because I'm not using this as anything that resembles an excuse. And I think that is a good way to be. You know, I'm pleased I am like that. But it does mean that when you come to talk about it in an application, it can be a bit uncomfortable because you're not quite sure how to phrase it. So I went down the route of, you know, I want to talk about it in my application because I don't want to turn up to an assessment centre and then everyone's like, she's got one arm, you know, and then worrying about it and it's awkward. I want everybody to know straight away. So the way that I talked about it is I would use an example of when it made something more challenging, but I was successful anyway. So I always use an example of I did this intensive rock climbing course, which was the worst week of my life, but I don't write that. And it was really difficult, and it was made more difficult because like the climbs were designed for two-handed people. So I had to like think about different ways to get up the walls, and that obviously used like perseverance, and it used problem solving and all of these sort of skills that you're trying to demonstrate in your application. And then I'd say, you know, like I was successful and I managed it after a lot of trial and error, which is all true, and that's exactly how that happened. And I intentionally used that example because I mean I liked it and it's memorable, and to be honest, I don't mind them seeing me at a law fair and being like, oh, I wonder if that's that one girl who did that rock climbing course one-handed. So I think it's the type of thing that actually you should be proud of, and you should talk about your achievements surrounding any disabilities that you have. And I am always into making it like a positive, because I see it as a positive. I see it as there's lots of more problems that I need to be able to solve, so I'm a better problem solver for it. And I think if you're comfortable doing that, obviously I don't think you have to disclose any disabilities if you don't want to, but if you're comfortable and you're proud of it, then I think you absolutely should.
So we have on the Shoosmiths application form a section for disability confident. We're a disability confident employer, and if you wish to, then you can include some more information about that in that section. And what that means is we commit to interviewing anybody who sort of ticks that section. And who meets our minimum requirements. So you still need to meet the minimum requirements of the role, but it's obviously a really positive employer or employee endorsement. So that's something that I would urge people to disclose if they feel comfortable doing so. I think that's really positive advice. Your story about rock climbing reminds me of an experience where I went co-steering. Have you heard?
No.
It's kind of where you just jump into the sea and then swim into coves and things. It was horrific.
I might not do that actually.
I didn't enjoy it, but I am glad I did it.
Yeah. The formative experiences, you know.
Yeah.
My applications are filled with things that I hated doing that were really hard, but I managed to do them successfully anyway.
It's a real personality builder, doing something that gets you out of your comfort zone.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of the other people that I was with, we were a large group, they were cold. They were all feeling the real cold of the water in the sea, and I wasn't, but I think that's because I was so scared.
Yeah, you were just like adrenaline pumping.
Yeah. So I went on a course last week about resilience in our Birmingham office, and at the course we talked about things, or we shared things that made us happy. So I wanted to ask you, what's one thing that makes you happy?
That's a good question. So I suppose if we're talking about it in terms of resilience, a silly thing, it's like when I was doing my GDL, you might have heard it's low-key quite stressful, and one thing that sort of really calmed me down is that we have quite a lot of birds next to our house, and I was going out and feeding the birds and then getting them tamer and tamer and tamer. And so watching sort of the wildlife and watching the birds around my house and getting the crows to land on the roof and just watching them potter along, it's silly, but that made me really happy, and it got me out of my room and studying for an hour every day. And I think and I still I'm not quite a bird watcher, but I like sort of, I don't know, I'm a bit of an animal lover really, so anything that's to do with...
So I think on your blog page you...
donkey petting.
You said that you like donkey petting.
Yeah, it's because I wanted to make it seem really personal. I didn't want it to be almost like a graduate recruiter official space. I wanted it to look like it was here's my diary of my training contract progress, and this is very much about me. So yeah, I wanted to get the balance, and I love donkeys. I get them adopted for me on Christmas every year.
That's a nice thing to do.
Yeah, what about you?
So I've got an adopted llama.
Do you? Yeah. Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, so I guess I could add petting llamas.
I went to a llama sanctuary recently. Excellent.
Yeah. So a bit of an animal lover too. So recently something, one of the solicitors at Shoosmiths actually introduced me to a kind of art class, and it's just like on a Friday night in a really nice coffee shop where you get a really nice coffee and cake, and then all the art materials, and they just talk you through painting a picture. And we've painted flamingos and also painted like a kingfisher and a couple of other things, and I've also done silver jewellery making class with them too. So
that's swanky.
It's really good. And if you're in the Milton Keynes area, it's called Something Less Boring. You can search for it. And it's great because I think in the same way you're talking about the birds, it takes you out of it's a step outside of your life almost for a second. And sometimes you just need that break.
You need to see there's other stuff going on, like there's other people living other lives that have nothing to do with you and your training contract woes or your GDL woes. And there's other stuff going on. I think anything that lets you do that is really positive. So that's something that's really making me happy. And the next thing I'm going to with that group is wreath making. Wreath making? Which I think right in time for Christmas if you crack on.
Exactly, so I can't wait to get that on my front door.
That sounds so good.
Fun. It's good to do something different. And something I wouldn't say I'm artistic or anything, so it's fun.
Just enthusiastic. It's fine.
So, just a reminder, if you want to ask any questions to Rosie or me, then just type them into the comments now, and again, I'll get to those in a second. So, Rosie, I wanted to ask you, do you have any questions that you'd like to ask me?
So what I really like about talking to graduate recruiters with a training contract is I can just ask you anything and give me the information. So what I want to know is, what are the things that are sort of driving you crazy with maybe the last batch of applications or the batch before that? Like, what are the things where you're reading them and you're like, would you stop doing that? That sort of thing. So any hints and tips?
So I've written a blog post about this very thing as well, which you can find on the Shoosmiths Careers blog page. And I'll share the link to all of the things that we've talked about at the end of this video. But I guess the main thing that I find candidates really miss off applications is making the link back to why it's going to make them a great solicitor. So when you're doing the application form, you come to the long questions where you want to spend quite a bit of time. That's where you're going to score more points. And if you're thinking about competency-based questions where you need to explain something that happened and then obviously what skills you learned, how you might do it differently. People are really good at explaining the situation. So, for example, how they worked in a team. They're really great at explaining the skills that they developed or gained in that situation. So, teamwork, maybe resilience, confidence, communication. But then quite often the story ends, and that's the end of the answer. So, what we want to know is, what happened? What would you do differently? And also, why do we care? Why is that relevant to us as a firm? So then linking it back and saying, and I know that communication is one of the key skills that you look for in a lawyer, because we've got to communicate in a really consistent way to our clients to make sure they understand, and just linking that final point back. And I think it's such a simple thing. When I say it at every event.
It's so often missed.
But it's when you get into the depths of the application form, it's really easy one to miss.
It's so easy to miss out the results section. Like occasionally, I'll have a look at someone's application, and something that they do kind of wrong all the time is exactly what you said. They'll be like, oh, and this was really awful, but then it got fixed at the end. And you want to talk about what was the result? What was and think about it in a corporate commercial way. In that, I used to talk about being a care assistant and for elderly people, and that's not something that you would naturally think you can make commercial, but actually you can, because if I didn't get everyone up and dressed on time, or if I didn't do my job on time, then they couldn't get the dinners out quickly enough, and then that meant that the kitchen staff had to stay late, and that cost the company money, and that meant that they weren't they couldn't charge competitive fees. So all of that stuff, you can always link it back round to something commercial, so you can show off your commercial awareness, or link it back round to your firm research, which you're always trying to put in, so information about the firm, or why it's relevant to you being a solicitor. Don't just sort of leave the story halfway through.
And I think that links around to using the word count as well, which is always the obvious thing, spelling and grammar. I don't like to go on about them too much, but word count, if you're not using the full word count, you're probably not answering the question properly.
I used to write my answers in that I would write them out how I wanted to write them out, and then that would be double the word count and I would boil it down, and it would get to the point that I was trying to find like a more efficient word. Like I was looking in the thesaurus for a word that had less letters than the word that I wanted to use, and just thinking about how you're phrasing your sentences as well, in that like it's really easy to write in a waffly way, but it's very hard to write in a concise way, and that's the thing that I think is, or at least from my experience, is the difference between like a well-polished application and one that isn't, and it's mainly like the drafting and how concise you can possibly be.
I actually think using Twitter and having a Twitter account is a really good way to practice bringing your word count down, because in Twitter you only obviously get a limited number of characters to use in your post, so sometimes you do start with a much longer post and then you have to nail it down. So that's a really like a simple tip, is just practice on Twitter and tweet some graduate recruiters and about your advice and your experiences and get known. So there's all of the advice we've given so far all in one.
Second question, just a quick one. What's the difference between someone who goes to an assessment day and they do just all right, and someone who goes to an assessment day and you're like, wow, we're going to give them a training contract? Like, what's like the...
Oh wow, that is the big question.
I know it is there.
That is a big question. So I think it's the well-rounded package of ticking all of the boxes that law firm is looking for. So, and that will be different based on which law firm you're going to. But for us, we're looking for behaviours that really sit within our values. And we talk a lot about values at Shoosmiths, and we really do live and breathe them in the firm. And there's 4, so I tell you them, they're pulling together. So that's obviously all about teamwork, collaborating, coming together, bringing ideas. Well, now I'm getting tested. Taking initiative.
Like there's 2 plus or minus 2.
Taking initiative, so confidence, being proactive, that get up and go attitude, putting together, taking initiative, being within reach and responsive. So knowing that you need to get back to your clients, knowing that it's essential for their business, and being within reach is just simply like being able to respond to emails or be on the end of the phone, and having those values. So that's, I guess, harder to demonstrate at an assessment centre. You turned up, I guess that's a good
good job. Full points.
So what have we got? We've got being within reach and responsive, taking initiative, pulling together, and talking business sense, which is your commercial awareness, being able to tailor your advice so that it's suitable for the client or whoever you're talking to. So we're looking for behaviours that sit under those values, and we're looking for somebody who's a well-rounded person and who succeeds in all areas of the assessment centre. So this year, or just past, we introduced into our written exercise a number of different tasks that would test the way our candidates thought about things, and we were testing to see logical thinking. So we introduced some maths questions, and a lot of people did say to me afterwards, I know, people I think felt like it was a bit of a trick question, but it wasn't. It wasn't. And people said to me like, but I don't need to know maths, I want to be a solicitor. But it comes into everything. It's your budgeting, it's your billing hours, your targets, it's working out fees for a client and how much profit you're bringing in. You know, at a very basic level, it's working out how much you've got to spend on lunch that day. So it does come into everything. And I think having that broader view of understanding what skills you're going to need as a solicitor is not just giving legal advice. It's a whole package.
Good answer, but I'm not quite sold on the maths test. Sorry, I'm just not that.
I'm sorry about the maths. Right, so I'm just going to check and see if we've got any questions that have come in. So bear with me, it just takes a second to load up here. So we've got quite a few people watching, which is fantastic. Hello, everybody. So somebody has said, so Jemima says, how did you learn more about law being a history student? Do you think it hinders you in any way not having done law at an undergrad level?
Good question. So I absolutely loved my history degree. So I wouldn't, if I were to go back and do my life again, I would still pick my history degree just because I enjoyed almost every day of it. Like, I loved it. I still sort of like listen to history lectures in my free time like a nerd. So I really loved it, but it did mean that I was out of the loop. So there was sort of like law dinners going on that I didn't know about. There were presentations going on that I didn't know about, and you know, even the Law Society sort of, it's not assumed you're going to join. They don't assume that you want all the information about law firms like they would do if you were a law student. So I feel like you have to be extra proactive, but I don't feel like that's necessarily a disadvantage. It's probably more of a disadvantage to think because you've got a 2-1 in a law degree and you've gone to some law dinners that you're naturally going to walk into a training contract. I would say that entitlement isn't the right word, but like sitting on your haunches, like that is more of a disadvantage than thinking I'm a history student, I've got to hustle, which is what you should think if you are. Well, it's what you should think in general, but it's definitely what you should think if you're non-law. So you've got to go onto the career site and search for the events that you're not necessarily going to be invited to. You've got to, you know, research the firms on your own. Maybe none of your friends doing law, like none of my friends were doing law, so you don't sort of like get, oh, by the way, you know, there's that thing going on. You need to go out and search for that for the open days. But then if you do that, you're probably doing more than some law student who's just kind of going with the tide almost. And I don't think it's a disadvantage. I loved my history degree. I'd want to do it again. But yeah, you need some get up and go, but you need that anyway.
Yeah, I think putting yourself out there. And then we often get asked if people have been to an insight evening before with us, should they apply again if they didn't get through that year? And absolutely, we say yes, because you'll get different information, you'll meet different people, you're building your networks, you're practicing being in that professional environment and building that confidence within law. You might come back with better questions, whatever. So yeah, absolutely, just keep going, keep saying yes to opportunities.
A lot of it is about putting your face in front of recruiters as much as humanly possible. So whether that means like intelligent posts on LinkedIn, or it means going to lots of law fairs. Like I think I went to like 3 lots of law fairs. I went to a ton of events. Because I wanted the graduate recruiters at the firms I wanted to work at to get to the point that they recognised me and knew who I was. So I was going to like a ton of dinners, a ton of presentations, as many law fairs as I could get to, all the open days, because if they're familiar with you and you've given a really good impression of who you are, you still need a really good application, but you're not like faceless. They're like, oh yeah, it's you, I really liked you. You really liked her, she asked a really good question and she comes to all the events and she said our dinner was really well organised. So in you go to the assessment centre. So I think it is worth the effort, and you should definitely go to an insight day again, and maybe with better questions.
So that was Jemima's question. Thank you, Jemima, for that. So Hannah says, as a graduate recruiter, what do you look for in a vacation scheme application that makes a candidate stand out? So I guess that one's for me. So Hannah, it's same for vacation scheme and training contract for us. In fact, it's exactly the same application form. So what we're looking for is for you to demonstrate that value that you're going to bring to the firm, and also demonstrate your commitment to a career in law. So being able to show that you've really researched and you know and you really understand what the role of a solicitor is going to be really important. And I think most applications ask you, why Shoosmiths? So if you're answering that, we'd hope that you would include information perhaps about any work experience that you've had, not necessarily with us and not necessarily in law, but experiences that have helped you build to that decision that you want a career in law and that you're committed to it. So it might be that you've worked in a couple of corporate businesses, or you've worked in some public sector businesses, and that's helped you to make the decision that commercial law is for you, for example. So it's using that experience and explaining how that's helped you come to that decision, and then we can see it's well researched, it's well thought out, and we believe in you in the application form.
Yeah, and I think also if you've been to a lot of open days, you don't need to put each one as its own work experience, but definitely put them in, because then they're like, they've spent like loads of hours going out of their way to go to these open days or to go to the law fairs. They're clearly at least sort of committed to this, committed enough that we want to try them out on a vacation scheme. And also if they say, why are you applying? You want your answer to be as good as if you're applying for a training contract. It needs to have like really good firm research and like be really, really committed and informed. Don't just think, it's just a vacation scheme, so I just want to try it out. Like that might be true, but you need to sort of show them that actually you're seriously considering having a career, whichever firm
absolutely.
it is.
Think about the long term, and I think that's true for training contract applications as well. I think when you're at the stage you're applying, all you can see is the training contract, and that's the next hurdle. but think about the long term, because for us, we want to recruit trainees who are the future of our business and that are going to stay with us long term. So we want to know how you'll benefit and add value and what skills you'll bring for the long term.
That you're like a mini partner, potentially.
Yeah, that's a great way of describing it. So thanks for the question, Hannah. Let's see what else we've got in here. So All About Law are watching. They said they're watching us from Old Street in London. Let's see what other questions we've got in here. So would you recommend any website or publication for researching firms? And that question's from Leslie.
Yeah, so I mean, I suppose what you want me to do is like tell you like how I would research firms, because you already know, because you like Google it and then like Legal 500 comes up in Chamber Student and that sort of stuff. Like the sites that I could give you off the top of my head are the ones that everybody will use and will be the facts that you will read 1,000 times over. So actually how I would research a firm is I go and find out like who the managing partner is and who the CEO is. I Google search like interviews with them to see what sort of things that they're talking about. I try to find out what the firm's going to be doing over the next like 5-10 years. I try to get all this sort of insider information about the firm. If they publish their annual reports online, I'll go and read them. I'll go find out which departments of the firm bring in the most money, have the most clients, what sort of sectors they focus on and what sort of clients they have in those sectors. So it's not that I used certain sites that were really good, because the problem is if it's on a site that's easy to find, everybody's using it. But I would pretend I was writing a history essay on the firm and I would desperately try to find information that was so well hidden I didn't think anybody else had used it. And you know, the graduate recruiters did say my applications were really well researched, and I think that honestly, like, I think that made them overlook perhaps some weaker parts of my applications, because they can tell if you spent 10 hours researching the firm to write a good application. It just comes across because it's so good and it's so in-depth. And I think that justifies your motivation quite well. So I would say, you know, I mean, I quite like reading Legal Cheek, but I might not quote it in an application, like it's really good. But look at the websites that everybody else uses, get some inspiration, and then go searching for information you think nobody else has found.
Yeah, I think I love that advice. That's fantastic. That's so true, because as recruiters we're reading application after application, and you do spend a day, well, you spend more than a day, but on that day you're just, that's all you're doing. And so after a while every answer does become the same. So having someone that's researched something different and found something hidden is great to read. And that's why I love reading people that have really put personal stories and personality into application forms, because it's so unique, it's interesting to read. I
once had a graduate recruiter tell me that, like, don't use anything that's on the website, because, you know, you've written it effectively, and then if you just use that in your application, it's like glamorous plagiarism. It's like you're just parroting back to the graduate recruiters what they told you about the firm. Like, that's not research, that's just you plagiarising their website.
Yeah, that's true. And so you don't need to tell us like how many offices we've got. No, we know. Okay, perfect. So we've got a comment from Roxana that I just want. So she says that being white and having a white name helps enormously, and that's the reality. And I'm really sorry you feel like that, Roxana, because many applications and graduate recruiters now do blind out the names and just have like a reference number. So there wouldn't necessarily be any reference to them knowing that, and certainly that's to do with age and many other things as well. And I think initiatives like, or organisations like Aspiring Solicitors are fantastic at being able to overcome those barriers. And there are still barriers. I'm not saying there's not, but there's absolutely a lot of work that's being done to make sure that bias is going. So Aspiring Solicitors is specifically for candidates from underrepresented groups, and you can find out exactly those groups on the website. But I would encourage you to go and have a look at that, and have a look at how they might be able to help get you in front of employers, get you into events, like so many events with so many incredible law firms and businesses. Really? Chris was telling me about all the different businesses that they work with. ASOS, I know,
how good is that?
And Shell. So have a look at what aspiring solicitors do, and I think it's great. And
I think you're probably right. I mean, I know it's sort of like not the party line, but I think you're right. I had a friend who was really struggling with his applications. I suppose disclaimer, he can't proofread, so like, you know, we definitely proofread his applications, which helps, but then he like changed his name to something English and then got a training contract really quickly, and like, maybe it's because he couldn't proofread, maybe it's because there's still discrimination, which I think there definitely is, and like, I don't know, that's the sad world in which we live, and it's really rubbish, and it's not okay, but it is, I feel like it is moving in the right direction, but then it's easy for me to say as a white woman with a white name, so I hope it's moving in the right direction, and I think that looking at applications sort of like blind, I think is brilliant. I think that's really good, and that's the direction that firms should be working in. So maybe if you are conscious of that, you want to go and have a look at the firms who are recruiting in that way, and you might want to prioritise the firms that you're going to feel aren't going to discriminate against you, because that's a good enough sort of criteria as any, you know, because you don't want to even interview at a firm who you feel like are going to discriminate against you. So I suppose on the one hand, if you feel like they've been rejecting you because of your name, like that's a dodged bullet if they're going to do that for you.
Yeah, great advice, thank you. So we've got another question here, which is, she says, hi, it's Melina here. It's been around 4 years since I graduated with a first in law, but didn't really pursue a training contract, as I was not sure, hold on, that's just linked away, as I was not sure what I wanted to do. Will I be at a disadvantage applying now for a training contract? I feel rusty in law. Can you let me know how I can get back in the game?
I am rusty in law. I've done about 7 months of law. And I hadn't even done that when I was making my applications. I had spent about 1 week in like a small law firm in York, and that was it. That was all the law I knew. And I still don't know an awful lot of law, to be honest. So I wouldn't let that worry you, because my impression is, and I took this like the right way, is that you turn up on day one and they assume you know nothing, and they just want to see potential. So I think it definitely depends what you did in the last 4 years. But if you've decided to have a career change, I feel like if I was writing that application, I would just want to make it really clear, like, what my thought process was behind the career change, and also what transferable skills I've brought. But I think that could be like a benefit, you know. I think that's probably a really good thing. I've done quite a few jobs, and you know, I wasn't just one of those people who did a law degree, was a paralegal and got a training contract. You know, I did a history degree, worked in the fraud department of a bank as a care assistant forever, and then I worked like for a charity for a bit, and all of those things make your application more interesting, I think, and give you a broader range of skills. So I don't think it puts you at a disadvantage.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got more experience to bring, and I think as long as you can make your commitment clear now, that's what matters. Absolutely. So it doesn't matter about that gap. So I've been at the University of Leeds Law Fair today, and one of our first year trainees from Manchester office, Kendra, was with me, and she was obviously helping to talk to people today at the fair about Shoosmiths. And she was in her element because she used to work in events. So she'd had quite a bit of time where she'd been doing events and things, which I'm sure there's a huge number of transferable skills, but it certainly helped me at the law fair today. Absolutely. So yeah, there's nothing wrong with having some time out or changing your mind later on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see if we've got any other questions. So we've got from Chloe. She says, hello, how can I best utilise working as a paralegal to learn the skills I'll need to be a solicitor? Do you have any tips on using your position within a firm to the best of your advantage, so you can improve your legal and business knowledge and understanding and be better able to do a good job as a trainee? Okay, it's a really big question. So I'll start us off on that one. Yeah. So Chloe, if you are working in a law firm as a paralegal or any other role, I think you've got access at your fingertips to find out more information, especially about the hidden gems like you were talking about. Research. So you've got all the people in the world that you can talk to, and if you're joining a firm and you're interested in a training contract, then find out who the graduate recruiter is and drop them an email and introduce yourself and ask if they've got 5 minutes for a coffee. That's definitely a starting point. If there's any groups that you can join, such as social committee groups that happen in your office, or we have like diversity champions and fundraising champions, CR champions and things like that, which are groups that run various events across our offices, which we encourage our trainees to get involved in, but a lot of our junior solicitors as well. So it's a great place to meet like-minded people from your office, learn from them, but also obviously raise your profile in the office too. Do you have anything?
That's a really good point. So as I said, I haven't been a paralegal, so I'm probably not the right person to ask. But I think also from my friends who are paralegals, I think they get quite loyal to those firms, and like that's brilliant. But I think sort of my tip would be make sure you're still applying for training contracts in other firms, because I think, I mean, not Shoosmiths, but I think there are firms who, if you're a really good paralegal, they don't necessarily want to promote you to a trainee because they've got a really good paralegal. So I think just make sure that you're using your time really well as a paralegal. Evenings and weekends doing your training contract applications. I know that's not very appealing, but I think it's quite easy to let quite a lot of time go by and you've not made as many applications as you should, and you do have so many transferable skills and you do have so much information at your fingertips. It's a shame to not like embrace that for furthering your career with other firms as well.
I think make it known to your team as well, if you feel comfortable to, that you are interested in pursuing a training contract.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because
if you don't ask, you don't get.
Yeah, and I think especially at Shoosmiths, we do support anybody that wants to do anything really, whatever they want to do, whether that's a training contract to be promoted into a different area, or if they've got a new idea that they want to follow up. So I think if you're comfortable to, then sometimes just say, I want to do this.
That's what I want to do.
And see what happens. And I think you're right about not shutting yourself off to other firms, because we could fill our training contract places each year with our paralegals 3, 4, 5 times over probably. So it is competitive. You still got to think about you. So I think that's all the questions that have come in, which is amazing. Thank you so much for your questions. That's been really great.
Really
so
good.
finally, I've got a question that I'd like, or a couple of questions I think to ask you just to finish. And one of them is, so if a student is watching this and feeling a bit deflated, maybe they've been rejected this year, what is your advice to pick them up?
So I think I always get asked like, did I sort of feel like, did I feel really like down when I was doing my applications? And I sort of never did. And I think part of that is because I had a really great support network. So I had like parents who believed in me. My best friend was like, why are you not making applications this afternoon? You know, and I had like career mentors. So I think tip 1 is make sure you're surrounding yourself with the right people. If you're surrounding yourself by perhaps with law students who are all complaining about how awful and competitive it is and no one's getting a training contract, those are the wrong people. You need to go find people who believe in you and think you can do it no matter what. And then sort of tip number 2 is that don't look at it as in like one big thing, break it down. So if none of your applications are successful, you need to figure out what you need to do to get over that hurdle. Don't think I've failed to get a training contract, just think my applications need improving. How am I going to do this? Who am I going to get feedback from? Can I get someone to proofread it? Do I need to go to more open days to get more research? So then you get over that hurdle, and then maybe you go to an assessment centre and they say no thanks. And then you're like, right, so how do I improve my performance at the assessment centre? So I don't know, maybe I need to like join debate society to improve my public speaking. Maybe I need to like research more what the firm's looking for. So look at it as a series of hurdles you need to get over, and then take it one step at a time. And I know that perseverance does pay off, but blind perseverance doesn't. So if you're sending out thousands of applications and not getting anywhere, then you need to fix your technique. And that might be as much as like you need to find out how to write a really good like competency answer, or you need to include more research in your application. So you go and get people to have a look at your application if you can, or you ask these questions like at this sort of thing, what do I need to include? And then once you've gotten over that, it's the next step. And if you look at it like a series of hurdles rather than one big thing, it makes it less demoralising when you fail, because, oh no, I've just failed at an assessment centre, it's okay, I'll improve next time. And it's more of a process rather than one big massive task that's impossible.
Yeah, so it's more about logical thinking and problem solving to overcome those.
One bit at a time.
Yeah, perfect. And my final question is, so, well, your blog is called Apply.Shine.Win, and people can find that through LinkedIn, or what's the web address?
www.Apply.Shine.Win.com.
Okay.
So all one word.
Nice and easy.
Yeah.
And you must have come across a number of other bloggers or vloggers that you're interested in. So wanted to know if there's anybody you would recommend and we go and follow.
Shout out. So I really like Chrissy Wolf, like she's really good, like she supports my blog and I think her videos are fantastic. She's so glam, you'll get like your week's worth of like rose gold, you know, if you watch her videos, they're really good. And I think you're doing something with her next month.
We are, yeah. So next month we are going to be joined by Chrissy Wolf, who's going to be talking a bit about vlogging.
So that's Lauren Broader. I also really like Catherine Cousin's new book, Successful Solicitor. It's, if you like sort of my blog, which is like very like honest and it's like here's how it is, you'll really like that book because it's just like here's what you do to not get fat as an associate, here is what you do to not drink too much and embarrass yourself in front of your colleagues, that sort of tips and advice which I need, we all need, you know, it's really good. And then I really like Finimize as well, like I've been plugging that quite a lot recently because I think it's a really good way to just make sure your commercial awareness is just up to scratch. Like it's not enough to go on its own, but they send you kind of daily updates at I think about 2 o'clock in the morning, which are like, this is what's going on in the markets, and then they'll explain things as well really clearly, so you will improve your business knowledge by following it. So those are the things that if you were to take anything away, I would go and follow Catherine and Chrissy and Finimize.
Perfect, thank you. So massive thank you for joining us today.
Pleasure to be here.
If you've enjoyed listening to Rosie's advice today, then do just hit the love heart for us.
Yeah.
So we know that you loved it. And I'm certain everybody that's watched is going to really enjoy watching this and get something out of it.
I hope so.
If you're watching this after the live broadcast, you can still ask us questions if you just comment, and we will jump on and we will answer those after the broadcast. As this will go out onto Facebook and also onto YouTube as well. Don't forget that there's